Hello, my name is Henry Blyden, and I would like to welcome you to the Veterans Report. As a retired veteran, I had a lot of questions about my after-service benefits, and we don't always know where to go to find these answers. It is our intention to bring you several of these programs, hopefully to inform, assist, and keep our veterans up to date as best we can. Today, we're going to talk about veterans benefits, and with me is Jerry Derrick, the Sarasota Veteran Service Officer, and Lee Washington, the Veteran Service Officer from Manatee County. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Jerry, let me start with you. Can you please tell us who is eligible for a VA pension with aid and attendance?
Well, VA pension is a needs-based program. It's for veterans with non-service related disabilities that are low income, and they also have to be a wartime veteran. You don't actually have to serve in a theater combat, but you just have to be in during a wartime period. And it's kind of a safety net program, so if a veteran, say, didn't really hold any gainful employment or became severely disabled at a younger age, the VA is going to provide that safety net where if their income's under $1,000 per month and they're unable to work, the VA pays $1 for every dollar that their income is under that $1,000 limit. The benefit that some people call a secret benefit is the aid and attendance program, and it's not very well known about. We've tried to make it a lot of public knowledge in Sarasota County, I know Manatee County, but if a veteran, an elderly veteran, say World War II veteran, becomes so helpless that they can no longer take care of themselves and they need to go into an assisted living facility because they need the aid and attendance of another person to take care of them, then the VA will consider the total cost of that assisted living facility to be a medical expense, and they will offset the veteran's income by that medical expense and then find them eligible for a VA pension of over $1,750 per month. This is a big thing because now between the veteran's Social Security benefits, say, and that $1,750 pension, they're able to be in this assisted living facility without the family having to help. This pension benefit is also for widows of wartime veterans. It's a little over $1,100 per month for them. But again, if they're they're not able to take care of themselves any longer, they can't cook, they need help showering, they need general help in getting out of bed, that type of thing because of disability, then the VA will consider them to be in need of aid and attendance, and if they go to an assisted living facility, they're usually going to be eligible for that VA pension benefit. It's based on income and net worth. The person also needs to have less than $80,000 in liquid assets. That's cash, stocks, bonds.
Okay. Well, Lee, let's say you're not eligible for a pension. Could you just be eligible for VA medical benefits?
Most definitely, Henry. A lot of veterans are eligible for VA health care and really don't know the qualifications. Unfortunately, that is a benefit current day that is income and asset based, as well as some of the programs that Jerry had spoken about earlier. The law changed in around 2003 to where if a veteran wasn't enrolled in the VA healthcare system at that particular time, they have to meet the income and asset guidelines. But a lot of veterans, especially those men and women that are getting out of the service today, from the date of discharge up to 5 years after discharge, they're eligible for VA health care without regard to their income and assets. You also have special groups of veterans that qualify regardless of income, those that may be service disabled, those veterans that served in Vietnam, those other veterans that may have been exposed to radiation and other special categories that the VA has set aside. But we encourage every veteran that we come across, as well as Sarasota County, to sit down with a counselor and see if they are eligible and get enrolled, because every year the budgets of the VA may change, and so will the guidelines for health care. So the earlier that a veteran can get in, the better opportunities do they have to take care of themselves.
And that's something that I always mention when I talk to veterans, and I say, don't sit here and second guess the system. Yeah. Set yourself an appointment with a counselor, sit down and talk about it, because what you're doing is you're disqualifying yourself without even knowing whether or not you've got benefits coming.
Right.
So tell me, Lee, how can a veteran, how does a veteran start to file a claim for disability? Where does one start with that?
Well, there are many different ways. The three ways that we see still today. You have the traditional way where a veteran will contact the VA either on the phone or in some type of written form saying that they have a problem and they need assistance. That is considered by the VA the starting of a claim, whether it be informal and just asking for assistance. You also now have the VA is rolling out the e-benefits program, which is online, to where a veteran can go online, set up an account, and file a claim digitally. But the most important, I think, in our office is that you want to file what's called now a fully developed claim, where the veteran will provide the VA not only with a full application, they also provide the diagnosis of whatever disability that they're claiming, along with any service records they may have and any other supplemental documents that they may have to support that claim, and turn it in all at the same time to the VA. So that now it's on the VA to go out and find any additional evidence that would continue to prove the veteran's case or disprove it sometimes. That's the way that the VA is really going. They want to expedite these processes so that we as veteran service officers, we counsel the veterans and tell them that's the way to go. But with any way that a veteran files a claim, whether it be the traditional e-benefits or fully developed, we still want them to make the appointment with the Sarasota County Veteran Service Officers that are in Sarasota, or Manatee County Veteran Service Officers in Manatee County, to ensure that it's done correctly. We're there as advocates for the veteran, but also we as veterans have to be our own best advocate by doing the things the right way. So those are the ways that the VA is accepting claims right now, but we strongly encourage them to use the fully developed claim method.
And our veterans got to understand that it's a process.
Yes, it is.
It's a process like any other process. It takes time. And though we're working on trying to expedite these things as fast as can be done, a lot of veterans just do not follow through on some of the things that they're supposed to do. Jerry, let's just say that I served in the field artillery, and I have a hearing problem. What do I have to do to make a claim, or does it differ from county to county or from state to state? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, all VA benefits are federal benefits, so the law applies across the country, regardless of what state you're in or where you live. Excuse me. VA, back in the early 1990s, determined that a lot of times veterans, say World War II, even Vietnam, were around a lot of noise exposure, and you were told to put your fingers in your ears so the concussion blast wouldn't damage you. It was not understood that that type of noise exposure causes a permanent progressive hearing loss. It also causes a condition called tinnitus, which is ringing in your ears. So from the 1990s forward, the VA pretty much recognizes that if you were around that type of acoustical trauma, meaning really, really loud noises, that it would have damaged your ears. And speaking to any veteran out there, if you were around an artillery blast one time, if you recall, you felt the concussion wave hit you, you then didn't hear anything for a while, and you would have this ringing in your ears. And the ringing in your ears never went away. Well, that's the tinnitus. You're shaking your head because you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly what you're talking about.
And also the hearing loss, most of my clients says, my wife says I don't listen to her. Well, that isn't the case. The veteran has lost his high frequency hearing. And again, if they were in a job in the military, an MOS, jet engine mechanic, artillery, I was an infantryman and I was a machine gunner, I worked with mortars, the VA is going to concede that you were around enough noise to damage your ears. So you need three things to make a claim with the VA. You had to have something you did in service. I was in artillery. You have to have a current diagnosis of a disability. And then what we suggest, and what Lisa could make in a fully developed claim, we would ask you to go visit an audiologist to have them look at your record and then say, yes, I believe this is due to your noise exposure from military service. That's called a nexus statement. Then you have a fully developed good claim. And the VA, from my experience, usually does what's easy. If you provide everything that they need to make a good decision, they're going to provide it. If they have to write to you, or if they have to write to doctors, or if you don't provide a diagnosis of a disability, then you go into this process that everyone hears about. Well, it took me 5 years before my claim got resolved. I've seen some of these claims come back within months. But again, you need to provide a diagnosis of the hearing loss, the tinnitus. You had to do something in service that would cause that, and then you need a connecting medical opinion.
Okay. And again, we talked about it being a process, and you mentioned that a lot of people don't provide the necessary information. It relies on you, the veteran, to actually supply this information for the claim that for the incident that you're actually claiming. For those of us who are connected with the VA hospital, it becomes a little easier because the records are there. But if you're not already in the system, you definitely got to get the necessary forms filled out. So Lee, take a minute and tell us, what's the difference between a VA pension and military retirement?
Well, the difference between VA pension, Jerry spoke on it earlier when he was talking about the aid and attendance, but VA pension is a monetary benefit that's paid to the lower income veterans, or those veterans that have a true medical need of another person, that may have large medical expenses related to that care, like assisted living, so on and so forth. It's an income and asset-based program. Where you have military retirement is for those veterans that retired from the military, the DOD side, whether it be the branch of the Army, U.S. Marine Corps, Navy, so on and so forth. That is based on their actual service, their active duty dates. They're paid a pension from the U.S. government for that service.
Right. Yeah, I fully understand that because I'm in that situation. Mm-hmm. But again, I've talked to a lot of veterans that just don't understand some of the differences between the military retirement and the pension and what they're eligible for and what they're not eligible for, mm-hmm. and how it's determined, how their eligibility is actually determined. Jerry, getting back to you, we talked a lot about Agent Orange and we hear a lot about Agent Orange. How does one prove exposure to Agent Orange, and can you tell us a few of the diseases that are associated with Agent Orange exposure?
Sure. Agent Orange, as everyone knows, was used extensively in Vietnam. We're learning now that it was also used in the demilitarized zone in Korea, and they used it in the perimeters and the bases in Thailand during the Vietnam War. At one time, again, in the VA, you had to prove that you were exposed to Agent Orange. You had to prove that you were in a certain area of Vietnam where they used Agent Orange. Excuse me. That was virtually impossible to do. So by regulation, Congress, again back in the early 90s, made a regulation that simply states if you are boots on ground in Vietnam for 1 minute, the VA is going to have to concede that you were exposed to Agent Orange. So that opened the door, if you will, for any veteran who actually was in country Vietnam actually from 1961 up through 75. If they were in country Vietnam, the VA concedes that they were exposed to Agent Orange. Disabilities that are currently associated with Agent Orange, the most common disabilities are ischemic heart disease, type 2 diabetes, prostate cancer, any respiratory cancer, Parkinson's disease, and lymphomas. Lee asked a question a little bit earlier. We were discussing how do these diseases get on this list? And the National Science Foundation has been chartered by the VA to do ongoing studies of all diseases and veterans. And if they find a statistical correlation between a disease and either exposure to Agent Orange or some other thing that would have happened in service, the VA, the Secretary of the VA, has the authority to say, I'm going to make this a presumptive disability, meaning we will presume that this is because of your Agent Orange exposure. And this started in the 1990s, and since then there have probably been about 30 diseases added. The first one was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but past that now. We just had ischemic heart disease and Parkinson's disease added.
Yeah, I remember because in 2008 when I had my heart problem and I submitted a claim with you, it was not on the radar at the time. And 2 years later, in 2010, they put that ischemic heart condition on the radar. And you were the one who called me and said you should be getting a letter from the VA. And within a couple of days, the letter was there, had to complete the doctor's report, send the information in. And it took about 9 months to actually get that approved. So the system does work if you actually do what these gentlemen ask you to do, and we'll get through it. Now, we talked about Agent Orange, and that basically a lot relates to Vietnam. But what are some of the common illnesses and other problems that are related now to Iraq and Afghanistan returnees?
I would have to say, from my experience, probably the most common is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And statistically, I believe I've read that as much as 25% of the troops coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan have been diagnosed with PTSD. So this is an invisible disease, but it does exist nonetheless. And the VA is going to concede if you were in those theaters of war, you would have been around enough stress to have PTSD. And I'd like to say, from what I've learned from experience in our training, is PTSD is not an abnormality, or it's not an abnormal thing. It's the normal reaction to a very horrible situation. And if people will look at it that way, I think a lot of clients are almost embarrassed to say, well, I think maybe I have mental problems. Well, that's not the case. You experience something that would traumatize virtually anybody, and so you're having a normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. I'd say that's the most common. Second most, I would say, are TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. In Vietnam and prior wars, when you were wounded, you frequently died. I mean, you didn't have what they have now. The soldiers have body armor, they have armored vehicles. So now when you're involved in these explosions, you suffer what's called a traumatic brain injury. And they're learning that if you're knocked unconscious, you're going to have had a traumatic brain injury. And they've now really determined that it affects all types of areas, including your psyche, your ability to concentrate, your memory. All kinds of things flow from a TBI, and the more serious the explosion is, the worse the disability is.
Okay. And you and I were talking earlier before we started the program, and mentioned that James Haley, the VA hospital right here in Tampa, has one of the best, or the best in the country right now for those kind of injuries. And I related to you that I had a young friend of mine that was injured, and he lives out in Texas, and they sent him here to Tampa for this treatment. So the treatment is available, and it's a matter of getting folks into the system. Talk to me, Lee, enlighten us a little bit about benefits for burials or burial expenses, because that's something a lot of people are not aware of. They say that the government's only going to give you $250 towards your burial. Talk about military veterans and what burial benefits is available to them.
Well, every honorably discharged veteran has earned the right to be interred at any national cemetery. We have one here in Sarasota, the National Cemetery off of Clark Road. And those honorably discharged veterans, if they so choose, they can be interred there, as well as their surviving spouse and any dependent children that they may have had. Dependent children for VA purposes, those childs from birth to the age of 18 or up to the age of 23 if they're fully enrolled in school, and also those adult dependent children, those that may have become fully disabled before age 18, are also considered dependents of that veteran. And that would cover the opening and closing of the grave, the perpetual care of the gravesite, the headstone or marker, whatever they should so choose, and the memorial flag for the veteran's burial that's given to the next of kin. As far as burial expenses and things like that, if the veteran prior to death was receiving compensation, whether it be for disability, through the service, or pension, may have died in the care of the VA, and a couple of other situations, the surviving spouse or the family member that paid those expenses can file a claim for reimbursement up to a certain dollar amount. If the veteran's death was related to their military service or service-related disability, it's up to $2,000 now. If it was not related to service, it's $300 for the burial and up to $700 for plot. Take that back, it's $700 for the burial and $300 for the plot. But it's a reimbursement. It's not paid in advance to help bury the veteran. Although I do understand, I don't know if Jerry has more information on it, there is some movement in Congress to try to have some funds set aside to help supplement what a lot of communities have as indigent burial. But they want to make sure that no veteran is left, or no veteran's family is left wondering how are they going to pay for mom or dad's funeral, because they've served the country, and there needs to be better ways of making sure that they get buried properly.
And just being clear, that's not a retired veteran or a veteran on disability or a veteran on pension. That's any honorable discharged veteran of any armed forces.
That is correct.
Okay.
If I could add to that, Henry, in the state of Florida, we're involved with the indigent burials in my office. By law in Florida, the county is obliged, if you have an unclaimed body, to try to determine if that person is a veteran. And if they are a veteran, the county is to arrange to have that, the remains of that person transferred to the National Cemetery. So that's done already in Florida, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's my understanding, being in the system, that, you know, Florida is one of the better states with some of these benefits, although a lot of them are federal benefits that are available to every veteran. Mm-hmm. There are some benefits that the state also allows for that I don't think people are aware of. Simple thing like getting into a national park in the state of Florida. If you're, you know, a disabled veteran, there's no charge for things like that. And property taxes and so forth can be adjusted based on the amount of disability. So again, people just need to get in and sit down and talk to a veteran service officer and find out what their entitlements are and what benefits they have coming.
Most definitely. I think what's really important to let the audience know is that they know more about their service than we do, but we know about the benefits that they've earned. So to spend 5-10 minutes on the telephone, maybe a half hour to an hour in our offices discussing that, we can open their eyes to a lot of things that they have earned through their service.
Okay. Gentlemen, it's been just great having you here, and I know we could go on and on and on. The other thing that I'd like to kind of cover, and Jerry, you mentioned it earlier, talk to me a little bit about the ALS and the Lou Gehrig's disease, because I think that's been put on the list as one of the...
It was. I mentioned the National Science Foundation earlier, and for whatever reason, it was found that veterans have a higher rate of Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. Why? Who knows? But the fact is there was a higher incidence of it. So the Secretary of the VA, I believe about 4 years ago now, was notified that they had found that veterans with at least 90 days of service had a higher incidence of Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a fairly rare condition. So the Secretary, by his authority, added that as a presumptive disability for any veteran with 90 days of regular active duty. So that means the VA will presume if you were on 90 days of active duty and you get Lou Gehrig's disease, it will be associated with your service, and it's considered to be a totally disabling condition as soon as you're diagnosed with it in the VA.
Okay. You know, we've covered quite a bit here today, and about ready to wrap things up. Any little 5-10 minute statement, 10-second statement that you'd like to give us, Lee, before we close?
I think if nothing else that you leave today is that it's so important that you speak with the professionals that do this every day in Manatee County and Sarasota counties. We're here to serve the residents of each of those counties. We're not the VA. We are, if you will, the go-between for the veterans and the families with the VA and other agencies, whether it be state or local governments, to help them file claims and educate them on the benefits that they've earned. And you can definitely contact our office Monday through Friday.
Jerry?
I'd like to echo what Lee's saying. The state of Florida created the positions of county veteran service officers right after World War II to help the returning veterans. And each county in Florida now does have county veteran service officers paid salaried by the county. So it's a great service. This is available all throughout the area. It's not just our counties. And we are all trained and certified by the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs. And as Lee indicated earlier, we act as the advocate for the veteran. We're going to do what we can to get benefits for those clients.
That I can attest to. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for coming down and sharing this information with our veterans and their families. Our veterans have sacrificed so much for our country, and it's only right that we ensure that they have timely information and access to the benefits they may be eligible for and well deserved. Viewers, if you have any questions, please contact Jerry Derrick and Lee Washington at the numbers and emails on your screen. And folks, I will see you again on the Veterans Report.